Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. California, 1873. The relentless sun beat down on the dusty streets of Dry Gulch, a mining town clinging precariously to survival in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Wooden shanties and tented shacks lined the rutted main road where the clatter of mining carts echoed through the thin mountain air. Gold had drawn men here, dreamers, drifters, desperados, each hoping to strike it rich or at least scrape by. But beneath the boisterous exterior of this rough-hewn town lay secrets ripe for uncovering, and no one was better suited to the task than a woman named Elizabeth Camden. Elizabeth had arrived in Dry Gulch under the guise of a mail-order bride, a delicate bundle in a pale blue calico dress and a bonnet protecting her stark features from the sun. But those green eyes that searched the horizon hinted at steel beneath the softness. To the townsfolk, she was simply the new wife of Jedediah Miller, a local miner with hopes as high as the mountains themselves. To none did she admit the truth. She was an agent of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, sent to Dry Gulch to investigate a string of gold shipment robberies that threatened to empty the town's coffers and sow chaos. Her true mission was perilous. Posing as a mail-order bride allowed her proximity to the miners and townsfolk without arousing suspicion. But she was walking a razor's edge. Exposure meant death, not just by outlaws or disgruntled locals, but more chillingly, by the very men who sought to protect their stolen loot. As she adjusted the pearl locket around her neck, a memento from her late father who had been a Pinkerton operative, Elizabeth steeled herself. The time for passivity was over. The first weeks were uneventful. Jedediah Miller was a gruff yet kind man, his hands calloused from years of swinging a pickaxe. He welcomed Elizabeth with gratitude, and though the bond between them was still brittle, a fragile trust was forming. Yet Elizabeth's nights were restless. The near silence of the town gave way to murmurs of late-night robberies, shadowy figures who had been swiping gold shipments on the routes down from the mines. The local sheriff's deputies were too few and too often bribes or fear shackled their action. Elizabeth's Pinkerton instincts told her the culprits were no mere highwaymen but part of a larger, organized conspiracy. She began her investigation with subtlety. Frequenting the town's only saloon, the Golden Nugget, she listened and observed under the guise of nursing a ginger ale. The air reeked of sweat, whiskey, and smoke. Miners grimly played cards, their voices dipping low when a stranger entered or spoke openly about recent events. Elizabeth learned quickly that fear was as much a currency as gold here. Men whispered about a man called Black Jack Valentine, rumored to be the ringleader of the robberies. No one had seen his face, but his name struck fear like the crack of a whip. One evening, as amber hues of twilight faded into moonlight, Elizabeth sat near the bar, shading her eyes under the brim of her bonnet. A shadowy figure slumped onto the stool beside her. He was younger than most here, lean but hardened by the rough life. His eyes flicked toward her briefly before settling on the glass in his hand. "Mornin', ma'am," he muttered, voice rough yet laced with curiosity. "I haven't seen you round these parts much." Elizabeth offered a faint, polite smile. "I'm new. Married a local miner, Jedediah Miller." The man nodded, though his gaze remained guarded. "Name's Gus. I work the mines too. But I don't care much for the sheriff or all the trouble these robberies bring." His hesitation suggested deeper knowledge, but he said no more. Elizabeth's mind raced. Could Gus be a way in? Days blended into nights shadowed by Elizabeth's growing urgency. She found brief moments with Jedediah to exchange pleasantries, but she could not confide in him. His earnest hope for a peaceful homestead conflicted with the grimness she faced. Besides, there was a pang of guilt. Was she deceiving him? But duty demanded the sacrifice. One morning, dawn spilled over jagged peaks and washed Dry Gulch in pink and gold. Elizabeth stepped out of their small cabin, greeted by the crisp mountain air. On the porch, she spotted Gus awaiting her in the new light. "I got something," he whispered hurriedly. "Meet me near the creek tonight." Discreetly. Fear mingled with adrenaline as Elizabeth nodded. The plan was dangerous. No telling if Gus was friend or foe. She spent the day maneuvering to avoid suspicion at the Golden Nugget and amongst the miners, her heart pounding with an unfamiliar ache. The night stretched endlessly before her, a tapestry of shadows. When the moon rode high, Elizabeth slipped from the cabin, dressed low-key in dark trousers and a faded shawl, her bonnet absent for inconspicuousness. Near the creek, the faint murmurs of flowing water intertwined with the rustling of leaves. Gus emerged silently from behind a cluster of pines, his breath visible in the cold night air. "I don't trust Black Jack," he intoned gravely. "He's got men in every corner. Sometimes, it's the law themselves." Elizabeth listened as Gus revealed clandestine meetings in abandoned mines, coded messages etched into rocks, and gold shipments rerouted to hidden caches. His voice dropped to a whisper. "If we get caught, we're both dead. But this corruption runs deep. You want to stop the robbers? We got to act." The resolve hardened inside Elizabeth. Here was her chance to infiltrate the heart of the operation. Gus agreed to guide Elizabeth to the secret meeting place of Black Jack's gang. As dawn tinted the sky, they parted with promises of safety and caution. Over the next days, Elizabeth's pretense was seamless. To the curious eyes, she was the devoted wife, grappling with the weight of frontier life. But beneath it, she painstakingly mapped routes and memorized faces during her brief nocturnal forays with Gus. She carried a revolver hidden in her pocket and a coded journal disguised among domestic ledgers. Every scrap of information was dispatched by discreet courier on the agency's behalf. Yet suspicion brewed dangerously close. Maggie Collins, the town's midwife and an inquisitive soul, had taken note of Elizabeth's secretive absences. One afternoon, Maggie confronted her gently in the town's general store, her eyes sharp but kind. "Elizabeth, dear, I've noticed you wander off at odd hours. We all live by trust here. What are you hiding?" Elizabeth's lips tightened. Had she miscalculated? But her voice was steady. "Maggie, I came here to build a life, not to stir trouble. Sometimes, the past we carry needs silence." Maggie studied her for long moments, then nodded. "Be careful. Dry Gulch doesn't forgive secrets lightly." The turning point came when Elizabeth and Gus dared to attend the clandestine meeting in a cavern deep within the hills. Cloaked in darkness, they crouched behind a wall of jagged rock. Dozens of men gathered, faces lit by lanterns flickering against veins of quartz. At their center was Black Jack Valentine, his broad visage illuminated by firelight, a thick scar running from eyebrow to jaw. He barked orders about shipment times and routes to the other outlaws. Elizabeth's pulse thundered as she recorded every detail in shorthand on a small piece of parchment. Suddenly, a loose stone betrayed their hiding spot with a tinkling clatter. Black Jack's eyes snapped toward the sound, and his men drew weapons. "Traitors," he growled. "Find them." Panic surged, but Elizabeth reacted on instinct. Grabbing Gus's arm, she darted through the cavern's serpentine paths, the roars of the gangmen echoing behind. In the chaos, a bullet grazed her arm, the sting sharp but not debilitating. They burst from the cave into the cold pre-dawn, lungs burning with exertion. Back in Dry Gulch, Elizabeth refused to surrender. With Gus's help, she alerted the sheriff's office and coordinated a posse. At first, the deputies doubted her, but the evidence she gathered was irrefutable. A confrontation was inevitable. Days later, as Dry Gulch's dusty street filled with nervous onlookers, outlaws and lawmen clashed in a fiery battle. Elizabeth stood beside Jedediah, who had eventually learned fragments of her true identity but accepted the harsh reality for the town's sake. With grit and courage, the sheriff's posse dismantled Black Jack's gang. The leader himself was captured, his cruelty unmatched but just as swift. In the quiet aftermath, Elizabeth sat on the porch of their cabin, bruises fading but spirit unbroken. Dry Gulch had survived its darkest hour, and with the gold shipments secure, hope renewed in the air. She pondered the future, not just as a Pinkerton agent, but as a woman claiming a place in this rugged world. Jedediah approached, his gaze soft yet proud. She smiled, the weight of secrets slowly lifting. The mountains stood eternal around them, silent witnesses to a story of courage, deception, and redemption. Elizabeth Camden, the Gold Dust Bride, had carved her own destiny in the wild frontier. A testament to bravery cloaked beneath a bonnet. For more stories, like and subscribe.